Keys to mastery. A man should learn to direct and watch that gleam of light which flashes across his mind from within, more than the luster of firmament of bards and sages. Yet he dismisses without notice his thought because it is his. In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. Ralph Waldo Emerson. If all of us are born with an essentially similar brain, with more or less the same configuration and potential for mastery, why it is that in history only a limited number of people seem to truly excel and realize their potential power? Certainly, in a practical sense, this is most important question for us to answer. The common explanations for a Mozart or Leonardo da Vinci revolve around natural talent and brilliance. How else to account for their uncanny achievements except in terms of something they were born with? But thousands upon thousands of children display exceptional skill and talent in some field, yet relatively few of them ever amount to anything. Whereas those who are less brilliant in their youth can often attain much more. Natural talent or high IQ cannot explain for future achievement. As a classical example, compare the lives of Sir Francis Galton and his older cousin Charles Darwin. By all accounts, Galton was a super genius with an exceptionally high IQ, quite a bit higher than Darwin's. These are estimates done by experts years after the inventions of the measurement. Galton was a boy wonder who went on to have an illustrious scientific career, but he never quite mastered any of the fields he went into. He was notoriously restless, as is often the case with child prodigies. Darwin, by contrast, is rightly celebrated as a superior scientist, one of the few who has forever changed our view of life. As Darwin himself admitted, he was a very ordinary boy, rather below the common standard in intellect. I have no great quickness of apprehension. My power to follow a long and purely abstract train of thought is very limited. Darwin, however, must have possessed something that Galton lacked. In many ways, a look at the early life of Darwin himself can supply an answer to this mystery. As a child, Darwin had one overriding passion: collecting biological specimens. His father, a doctor, wanted him to follow in his footsteps and study medicine, enrolling him at the University of Edinburgh. Darwin did not take to the subject and was a mediocre student. His father, despairing that his son would ever amount to anything, chose for him a career in church. As Darwin was preparing for this, a former professor of his told him that the HMS Beagle was to leave port soon to sail around the world, and that it needed a ship's biologist to accompany the crew in order to collect specimens that could be sent back to England. Despite his father's protest, Darwin took the job. Something in him was drawn to the voyage. Suddenly his passion for collecting found its perfect outlet. In South America, he could collect the most astounding array of specimens as well as fossils and bones. He could connect his interest in the variety of life on the planet with something larger. Major questions about the origins of species. He poured all of his energy into this enterprise, accumulating so many specimens that a theory began to take shape in his mind. After 5 years at sea, he returned to England and devoted the last rest of his life to single task of elaborating his theory of evolution. In the process, he had to deal with a tremendous amount of drudgery. For instance, 8 years exclusively studying barnacles to establish his credentials as a biologist. He had to develop highly refined political and social skills to handle all the prejudice against such a theory in Victorian England. And what sustained him throughout this lengthy process was his intense love of connection of the subject. The basic elements of the story are repeated in the lives of all the great masters in history: a youthful passion or predilection, a change encounter that allows them to discover how to apply it, an apprenticeship in which they come alive with energy and focus. They excel by their ability to practice harder and move faster through the process, all of this stemming from the intensity of their desire to learn, from the deep connection they feel to their field of study. And at the core of this intensity of effort is in fact a quality that is genetic and inborn, not talent or brilliance, which is something that must be developed, but rather a deep and powerful inclination towards a particular subject. This inclination is a reflection of person's uniqueness. This uniqueness is not something merely poetic or philosophical. It is scientific fact that genetically every one of us is unique, or exact genetic makeup has never happened before and will never be repeated. This uniqueness is revealed to us through the preferences we innately feel for particular activities or subjects of study. Such inclinations can be towards music or mathematics, certain sports or games, solving puzzle like problems, tinkering and building, or playing with words. With those who stand out by their latent mastery, they experience this inclination more deeply and clearly than others. They experience it as an inner calling. It tends to dominate their thoughts and dreams. They find their way by accident or sheer effort to a career path in which their inclination can flourish. This intense connection and desire allows them to withstand the pain of the process, the self doubts, the tedious hours of practice, the study, the inevitable setbacks, the endless paths from the envious. They develop a resilience and confidence that others lack. In our culture, we tend to equate thinking and intellectual powers with success and achievement. In many ways, however, it is an emotional quality that separates those who master a field from many who simply work at a job. Our levels of desire, patience, persistence, and confidence end up playing a much larger role in success than sheer reasoning powers. Feeling motivated and energized, we can overcome almost anything. Feeling bored and restless, our minds shut off and we become increasingly passive.